Feel free to check out my TeePublic after the video, and support me on Patreon. Watch till the end of the video for more. In 2013, I was a wee lad whose only exposure to Japanese pop culture were Godzilla movies, Dragon Ball Z, Transformers G1 anime sequels, and Urusei Yatsura. Suddenly getting into another big kaiju phase thanks to Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim, which I constantly watched on repeat at the time, as well as the upcoming American reboot of Godzilla. There was this one show that people kept talking about. Granted, it was in smaller circles, but I kept hearing echoes of people discussing this one little anime series called Attack on Titan. All I knew at the time was that it was an anime with giant monsters, and that was it. Never watched it because I didn't know where I could watch it. Then my friends during middle school started talking about it, and this was around the time the English dub of the anime would air on Toonami, so I took advantage of that, tuned in every weekend for several months, and at that time, 14-year-old me felt like he had witnessed one of the greatest things ever. I was astonished by the sheer spectacle of mankind battling against giant humanoid man-eaters coupled with tons of death, destruction, and chaos. After that, I started reading the manga and fell in love with the story even more, especially as it concluded back in April of 2021. And with the hype for the anime being at an all-time high as it's also reaching its conclusion, I feel like there's no better occasion than to look back and see how all of this got started to begin with. In this new monthly video series, I'll be looking at each individual season of Attack on Titan and break down how and why it has become the modern epic that we know and love today. But first, a quick word from myself. Hey.
Who the hell was that?
Are you tired of those plain old t-shirts?
Yes. Oh, wow!
Introducing the official Toku Titancast t-shirt on TeePublic. Now available an eco t-shirt. Why pollute the world when you can wear a t-shirt made out of recycled and organic material?
Wow, it's made out of plastic bags and it feels comfortable.
And it's even knife proof. But that's not all. We have a multitude of designs ranging from all your favorite Japanese franchises like Godzilla, Kamen Rider, Gundam, Attack on Titan, and Garo. Feel free to check out the official TitanGoji TeePublic after the video. Link is in the description. But before we begin, I feel like it's absolutely necessary to talk about the man behind the strings, being series creator Hajime Isayama. Born in Oita Prefecture, Isayama grew up in a rather isolated town surrounded by mountains. Growing up watching kaiju movies, Isayama was always inspired by the creatures on screen like Godzilla, Mothra, and Gamera, as they were gods who reminded us of just how small we really are. Later in his life, he picked up a love for watching and analyzing mixed martial arts after watching the fight between Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira and Bob Sapp in 2002. However, it was also during his teenage years where Isayama was experiencing depression. While he normally kept to himself, he was frustrated with the world around him, and living in such an isolated town in Japan certainly didn't help matters, as he felt he was imprisoned by the world itself, unable to feel like he could accomplish anything. Later on in 2006, Isayama would then combine all these things together into a very experimental one-shot called Attack on Titan. Yep, what you're looking at is the very prototype that preceded the iconic series itself. 100 years after an experiment known as the Mankind Destruction Operation results in the creation of giant humanoid monsters who feast upon human beings. Mankind isolated itself in a distant city surrounded by a wall of massive trees. A soldier from the Vanguard Corps named Murakomo sees a young girl named Tsubaki who wishes for Murakomo to take her under his wing as an apprentice. Suddenly, a Titan appears in the city, and while fighting it, Murakomo is caught before being thought to have been killed, which is when he transforms into a Titan himself and begins battling the beast. Despite how rough looking it is, I mean, Isayama was 19 when he made this one-shot is actually quite solid. Even when separating what it would eventually become down the line, it has so many interesting concepts, and honestly, I wish we got a whole series out of this one universe. And when you put Attack on Titan into consideration, it's really astonishing seeing where so many of its concepts originated. Honestly, do yourself a favor and read it, it's pretty awesome. And while not exactly popular, this one-shot would actually become a runner-up in Kodansha's Manga Grand Prix in 2006. So while it wasn't exactly picked up to be continued, it was certainly recognized, so Isayama definitely got his foot in the door in creating manga, and this accomplishment only inspired him to pursue that path. After Attack on Titan, he started working on more manga, 2 sci-fi military stories named Heartbreak 1 and Oars, which unfortunately I can't seem to find much info about, aside from these scans Isayama's editor and longtime collaborator Shintaro Karokubo would share from time to time. Judging by these images, you can definitely see that Isayama undoubtedly has a fascination with this particular style of science fiction, taking as something as grounded as military warfare and setting it in a heightened reality. It very much reminds me of the works of Neil Blomkamp like District 9 and Elysium, and honestly, I really hope these 2 stories become more accessible in their entirety because they look super interesting. I know for a fact they're out there because they were published in Weekly Shonen Magazine and even recognized, as Isayama would receive the Newcomer Award for both of them and the Special Encouragement Award for Heartbreak 1, so why the hell hasn't anyone scanned them yet? Or translated them for that matter. It's also worth noting that just by looking at these scans, you can definitely see where Isayama got a feel for how he would go on to depict action sequences, as well as framing scenes in his work. Hell, some of the character designs in these stories would pretty much be reused in Attack on Titan. Like, don't tell me that these people are not Attack on Titan characters. However, even though his work in Heartbreak 1 and Oars got the attention of the manga industry, they also weren't received too well, as Oars would be recognized for having, and I quote, "the worst art in the award's history" when Shueisha, the company behind Weekly Shonen, gave him his Newcomer Award. God damn. It's likely because of this that Isayama started to distance himself from that kind of military sci-fi aesthetic. And while it's very clear that he had creative potential, he decided to go back to his more creative roots, where he had quite a fondness for giant monsters and mixed martial arts, and revisited Attack on Titan, but in a whole new way. And on September 9th, 2009, the first chapter of Attack on Titan was published in Basatsu Shonen Magazine, and has easily become one of the most celebrated fictional stories in the last decade, with a dedicated fanbase that's still strong to this day. And like with any popular manga, an adaptation is bound to happen, so seeing that the manga was heavily inspired by classic Tokusatsu and Kaiju eiga, Toho Studios, the company behind the Godzilla series, wanted to turn Attack on Titan into a feature film in 2011, set for a 2013 release. However, with behind-the-scenes complications such as director Tetsuya Nakashima stepping out, the production was put on hold until Shinji Higuchi took on the project in 2013, as it would then be scheduled for 2015. Though during that time, Wit Studio, a subsidiary of Production IG, known for classics such as Ghost in the Shell, End of Evangelion, and Jinro the Wolf Brigade, wanted to bring Attack on Titan to the world of anime, spearheaded by Death Note anime director Tetsuro Araki. On April 7th, 2013, the first season of Attack on Titan began airing, and wrapped on September 29th of the same year, covering the first 34 chapters in a span of 25 episodes. And with such a colossal introduction out of the way, let us finally talk about the anime that shook the world to its core, Attack on Titan. In a world overrun by giants, mankind lives within 3 concentric walls. Humanity is at peace until a colossal titan appears outside of the Shiganshina district and threatens their existence once more. The outer wall is destroyed, letting in a massive wave of titans to feast on humanity again. Amidst the chaos, Eren Yeager, who's lived a life of confinement, angry at the world around him, is struck with the harsh reality of the living hell he finds himself in as he watches his own mother get devoured by a titan. I just want to say this is easily one of the greatest first episodes in anime, as it hits all the right marks. Everything you need to know about the story that is about to unfold is here. This episode, and by extension the entire Fall of Shiganshina arc, accomplishes so much on a visual and storytelling standpoint. Key characters are properly introduced, the threat is more than well established, the stakes are made clear, and the build-up, as well as the payoff, is just rich. Just the whole Fall of Shiganshina arc in itself, including the fallout, is easily one of the strongest pieces of storytelling, being what appears to be the start of a simple revenge story that pulls absolutely no punches at all. And that brings us to the 104th Training Corps arc, where after trying to seek refuge with his friends Mikasa and Armin, Eren decides that he wants to enlist in the military, as they would join him in his efforts to take revenge on the monsters that were responsible for everything in the first place, or so he thinks. But I'll get to that in another video. It's at this point we're introduced to the much larger supporting cast, all of which are very distinct and memorable based on the interactions they have with either each other or the main characters, like Jean and Eren butting heads constantly. That one funny little tidbit with Sasha and Krista. But my favorite probably has to be this interaction with Eren, Armin, Reiner, and Bertolt. During this arc, despite Eren's tenacity and dedication, he begins to experience self-doubt, as he feels just as powerless as he did before, and through the help of Reiner and Bertolt, after a moment of inspiration, Eren finds his courage once more. Reiner is easily my favorite character in Attack on Titan, and while I'll expand upon him in future videos, Season 1 Reiner is basically the anime equivalent of the guy you see at the gym who's way better looking and stronger than you are, and for just no reason would just come up to you and tell you how great you're doing, just cuz. Like, the dude's a real Chad. So while the story takes a break from all the action, it allows itself to breathe and accomplishes a lot in this short arc. Which then brings us to the Battle of Trost District. The show picks itself up again and creates a major tonal whiplash as the Colossal Titan appears once more, and a repeat of what happened years prior takes place, but this time Eren can fight. Or can he? However, the Colossal Titan just suddenly disappears as soon as Eren was about to deliver the killing blow. And almost immediately after, a pretty damn good chunk of the cast we saw during the last few episodes, thinking they're fully prepared for battle, all begin to die one by one. And even though we barely know a thing about these characters, it's honestly kinda demoralizing when you really get down to it. In a way, it very much parallels the harsh reality of young soldiers going out to war during World War II. This little segment ends with Eren rescuing Armin from certain death before being consumed by a Titan. So the main character just fucking died, or has he? So now what? Well, other people from the Training Corps are pretty much going through the same thing, and we see how Eren's supposed death affects the supporting cast, especially Mikasa, someone Eren has been close to for so long, someone who found a purpose to live thanks to Eren. Like, things get pretty miserable here. But when all hope seems lost, the anime pulls another gear shift and we're introduced to the Attack Titan for the first time, who turns out to be Eren. Honestly, I saw this twist coming 10 miles away. Like, come on, you're not going to kill your main character on episode 5. However, this part was cool as shit and I'm never gonna deny that. Though in all fairness, the Battle of Trost has a bunch of other highlights as well, like the interrogation where Armin builds the courage to stand up for himself, this unnecessarily amazing earth-shattering shout from Dot Pixis, and definitely the boulder. And finally, we're introduced to the Survey Corps, or Scout Regiment, depending on the translation, led by Irwin Smith, or Irvin Smith. These fucking localizations. It's also at this moment we're introduced to other key characters like Levi and Hanji, as we now transition towards the Female Titan arc, which takes up the latter half of the first season. So what we initially thought was this sort of horror kaiju revenge action spectacle has now become this sort of suspenseful mystery drama with kaiju fights. Now that we have information that select humans are capable of turning into titans as well, which is evident when we're introduced to the female titan who's after Eren, which also confirms that the colossal and armor titans we saw earlier are controlled by humans. So this arc manages to do a really good job with adding depth to the overall world building in a very subtle manner. Even though it's also kinda obvious who the female titan was, the whole mystery aspect was super interesting, as you really don't see it that much in kaiju-related media. It's like when we all knew Hebukura and Ultraman Z was Jugless Juggler, we all knew it was coming, but the show still did a great job handling it. Nonetheless, the Female Titan arc still delivers a pretty impactful segment to the overall story. Like, the whole expedition was just super intense, as our heroes get surrounded by just a rapidly growing number of deaths, as well as the fact that we know more about its inheritor, Annie Leonhardt. And that final battle in Stohest District is easily one of the best climaxes to an anime season. Even if they kinda do an ass pull with Aaron's anime-only Berserk mode that's only been in this episode and was never used or mentioned ever again. But anyway, I remember watching it and thinking, this is just War of the Gargantuas, the anime, and it fucking rocks. And after so much emotional turmoil and hot-blooded, high-octane action, we are given yet another reveal. There are Titans inside the walls themselves. And then the anime went on a 4-year hiatus. Jeez, talk about blue-balling your audience. So as I'm sure we remember, after the first season of Attack on Titan aired, it rose to incredible heights of popularity tremendously fast. You could say that Titan Mania was in effect. As the series became a global phenomenon, it seemed like everywhere you went, someone was always wearing Attack on Titan merchandise to varying degrees. I mean, come on, you know at least one person who wore a Scout's cloak in public at least once. But just going off that first season, was it really worth all that hype? Well, yes and no. I can sing praises about this first season all day, as you clearly just saw. Just the action, the animation, Hiroki Sawano's music, and the fact that it blends so many genres together and creates a pretty compelling story is enough to make it worth a watch. Also, compare the character designs to that of the anime to that of the manga. It's pretty impressive how they were able to translate them so well. In fact, during the manga's early run, it was rather infamous for its supposedly ugly looking art. Yeah, it's rough looking, but there's a sort of charm to it that really adds an uncanny layer, as if it's some distorted nightmare. Gundam creator Yoshiyuki Tomino even went as far as to not only bash the art style while still respecting Isayama as a creator, but he claimed that Attack on Titan was so grotesque that it's comparable to pornography. When you have Yoshiyuki Kill 'Em All Tomino calling your series gratuitous, you're probably doing something right. However, it's the quality of the writing and the pacing that kind of brings it down a couple notches for me. I did say before that the story can be pretty predictable, but the payoff of some moments are enough to make up for that. Although, and I feel like this is kind of tied to Isayama's writing in the manga as well at the time, but you really get this sense that the story beats are clearly there, but the way they're strung together just kind of feels off and awkward, which unfortunately makes the pacing pretty inconsistent with these constant shifts. Which also kind of affects the tone at some points. Like, there were a couple of moments where I wasn't quite exactly sure how to feel, as I was in one moment, then immediately thrown into the next. And upon revisiting this first season, I found the first parts of it, mainly after the fall of Shiganshina and before the final part of the Battle of Trost, to be pretty hard to sit through, but I was able to warm up to it. You could, and by you I mean Yoshiyuki Tomino, argue that the story gets pretty overkill at times, but let's face it, this was long before what came later, and when you're writing a story that draws real-world parallels to wartime, you're going to get pretty overkill. It's just the nature of it. But overall, Attack on Titan's first season still holds up pretty well. Sure, it's not perfect, but there's enough to make up for its shortcomings. The characters are all memorable, the action is pretty sweet, especially looking back now as an Ultraman fan, and it does a fantastic job blending so many genres together. It's no wonder why Attack on Titan became such a massive hit upon airing. And stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, because up next in this retrospective series, I cover Season 2. In the meantime, if you like what you see, then definitely consider supporting me on Patreon, where for a single $1, your name can appear at the end of every future upload and get access to my Discord server. Other than that, you can also get early access to videos, exclusive content, commission video requests, and receive a t-shirt of your choice from my TeePublic, like this gym shirt based on Attack on Titan. I also want to thank my good friend Cole for editing this video. Greatly appreciate it, man. And once I reach enough patrons, I'll do a video covering several animated Godzilla films, so if that's something you like to see, then go support me on Patreon. And go ahead and check out my other videos about Attack on Titan. Feel free to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and this is TitanGoji, signing off. Shinzo wo sasagyo!